Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check. It was on before. All right. Well, we're here. This is great. I got a little Zoom going. I got some Facebook Live going. We'll kind of wait until the Facebook people will chime in as they see that we're live. But right now, I've got 3 doctors on my Zoom screen, and we are going to speak about the issue at hand, which is COVID, a virus of some sort, or maybe not. But I'm going to allow you guys to do the talking. Dr. Wills, since me and you kind of connected and talked a lot about getting this going, why don't you first take a second to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Will Trebbing. I'm a chiropractor in Stamford and Greenwich, Connecticut, and also in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And I wrote a book called Goodbye Germ Theory back in 1999, which is still around today.
Awesome. Who's next?
Oh, Adam can go.
Go ahead, Adam.
Hi guys, I'm Dr. Adam Massoud. I'm a chiropractor, acupuncturist, and nutritionist. Been in practice in Greenwich for about 15 years. Do a lot of sports medicine, but the main thing would be we kind of coin it, or I've coined it, healthcare the way nature intended, right? Trying to end the sick care model that kind of prevails and is really doing a good job right now. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. We do all natural therapies and just take a real thorough approach to treating things that shouldn't be left untreated.
Awesome.
I'm Dr. Marizelle Arce. I'm a natural.
Sorry, that leaves you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We want to hear from you. We want you to introduce yourself. Go ahead.
I'm a naturopathic doctor and applied kinesiologist. I'm also an herbalist. I've been practicing since 2007, and I can say I'm fairly unique in the way I practice. Along with Dr. Will, I don't subscribe to the germ theory, so I definitely work on people's terrain and their overall health more so than just treating their issues. So that's basically it.
Well, and since the other two people said it, I've been in practice since 1985.
Yeah, man.
I don't know, Adam, you were probably 2. Marizelle, you weren't even thought of it.
I was a little older than 2, but yeah.
No, I was 5.
Not by a lot. Yeah. I wasn't
so
old
I think one thing we all have in common.
Wasn't old enough to have the fun you were having in '82.
These are some of my favorite people, Glenn, in practice, and they both share my vision for sure on natural healthcare and thinking twice before you vaccinate, and also natural methods before allopathic.
Well, let's start with that word vaccinate. And, somebody who does not have anywhere near any of your trainings, you hear the word vaccinate. I got into a random conversation with a friend of mine who said, once the vaccination comes along, we'll be fine. We'll be able to go out and play high school basketball again, and you'll be able to referee again, and everything will be great. That mindset is so there by a lot of people. First of all, how is a vaccination even going to work for something like this particular whatever that's going around?
Well,
well, you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. What I think first on that, to respond to that, is that's even the president has said that a vaccine isn't going to be available for 18 months. Even if it is available, it might even be available at this point. It might be impossible to make a vaccination for this thing. The thing that concerns me the most with this, and I call it a thing, there's a thing going on here, is that, much like they're not letting people into grocery stores right now without a mask on, what does that lead to next? And it really I think Trump is leaving it up to the different governors. So I think we're going to see a divide in this country about how that's going to look. Are you going to, need an immunity card? Are you going to need a test before you can get into certain places? And, I mean, it could be, nobody really knows what's going to happen. It could be all, or it could be nothing, or it could be something in between. If I can give my 2 cents on what I think is going on after I've analyzed it for this past month that we've been suffering with this, I think it's a threefold issue happening, and perhaps Dr. Mari and Dr. Adam will comment on this too. The first thing that I believe is going on is a respiratory issue, and it's a serious respiratory issue that all of us in practice have been dealing with for the last at least 10 years. Now, I know even in myself, I've particularly consulted both these doctors to find out how to take care of my own respiratory issues with sinus, and especially I've just noticed that I've been developing a cough which just won't go away over the last decade. And it wasn't until I got serious with consulting other natural physicians that I was actually figuring out where it comes from and what it is. So there's been a respiratory thing going on for a long time that resembles like a pneumonia that you can't get rid of. It's just a cough that just won't go away. My patients have been complaining about it. And the three of us can comment on how we can take care of that. There's a few ways of taking care of it. That's the first thing I think is happening anyway, and it's being called COVID-19. I have a theory on where that's coming from. We can get into that later. The second thing I think that's going on is there is some sort of hemoglobin affecting radiation or toxin around, as is being reported by several doctors. One particular emergency room doctor that has put out a YouTube, several other ones from Europe, as is being reported. It is like the people don't have pneumonia when they get to the ICU. Their lungs are clear, but they just can't seem to get enough oxygen. And it resembles high altitude sickness, like you've been dropped on top of Mount Everest, just kind of beamed there, like if it was a Star Trek thing, and all of a sudden you're there. Okay, they can't acclimate fast enough, and they just can't get enough oxygen. That can be coming from a number of different areas. I think everyone's trying to figure out what that is, but that's separate from the other respiratory thing. The third thing, and we could say that that's 5G or some other kind of toxin that might be causing that. The third thing that I believe is happening with this mess that we're in is a manipulation of statistics. I believe we can all agree on that, because whatever was declared as a respiratory issue, or anything from a sniffle to a common cold to a flu, which killed 37,000 people last year, to hospital-acquired pneumonia, to pneumonia in itself, all of that is now being transferred over into COVID-19. CDC's own guidelines state that you don't have to have any kind of test there is no definitive test to say this is COVID-19. It's all subjective depending on what the doctor feels. And I'll tell you what else is subjective with. It's financial, because Medicare is paying out a lot of money if a doctor puts in a COVID-19 diagnosis right now. I don't know what you guys can confirm. I think it's up to $19,000 for a COVID case with a respirator. It's up to around 40.
Yeah, I believe it was.
This is Medicare.
Maybe it went up. Yeah, I saw 13,000.
Maybe it went up. So just to conclude, those are the three things I think are happening.
Yeah, I would agree with all those.
Dr. Adam, why don't you kind of fill in some blanks there, or give us some other thoughts?
I think, I mean, I don't know how much time we have or to dig apart and where we want to stay on this COVID topic. I would agree with Dr. Will on everything he said. I think, they're talking the hemoglobin, all that stuff. So a lot of it is just an environmental poisoning that's been going on for a long period of time. There's a lot of things that have been getting pushed, it's hard to jump in and give the reasons for what I think without, they're not going to come across as what you're basically hearing on the mainstream. So when you look at the money trails, when you follow what's been going on, when you see the things that have been proposed, when you see, in my opinion, there is certainly a virus out there. I don't think it happened naturally. From a couple of the immunologists and microbiologists and epidemiologists who I've seen, because China released the actual genotype for the virus, because when it first hit them, They didn't know what to do, so they released it to the world for all the scientists to study. Well, it's been established there's a protein attached to the COVID-19 virus that just doesn't occur naturally in coronaviruses. It's not a mutation that could occur. So they said like 99.9% certainty this couldn't have happened naturally. It had to be inserted, one of the proteins in the virus. So when you hear, and we know that in Wuhan, they were experimenting with viruses. They were doing genetic mutations with viruses there. And we also know that Gates funded that lab in Wuhan. We also know Wuhan was the largest 5G city to roll out. They were the 5G test ground. And so that's in play there too. A year ago, I believe it was, maybe, Wuhan also, the city of Wuhan was forced under mandatory vaccination. So I don't see it as someone eating an animal that, in a market that's probably been around longer than America's been a country. Like people, you
That's
tell
a
them,
childhood story.
from bat soup, like, well, they've been eating bat soup or whatever they've been eating for 4,000 years, and the planet hasn't been wiped out by it, until our financial interests kind of get tied in with a country. They usually don't harm the rest of the world. So I find it funny that it always works out that way. I tell Dr. Will sometimes, kind of like AIDS was from Africans sleeping with monkeys. I mean, that's a real scientific pitch to give someone. But I do think that there's, I think that what you're seeing now in the illness, my fear, but my hope is that I'm wrong. But my fear is that the biggest damage isn't even yet to be done. This is ushering in, basically this is going to get people to submit rights that they're never going to get back. I mean, the government does a very good job taking rights away. They've been doing it pretty consistently. 9/11 went into overdrive, right, with the Patriot Act, and it was to protect us, right, from Arabs. And now they're, not the threat anymore. But we still have the Patriot Act, right? And now we're going to lose some more freedoms unless people start really getting educated about what health is and how it's. And I think to your point earlier, you made the point about like, well, when the vaccine's ready, they've really done a great job conditioning humans into being lazy and not taking accountability for their lifestyle. So health comes in a bottle. It's not something I got to do every day. It's not a decision I make. It's not what I eat. It's not my thoughts. It's not my activity level. So yeah, a lot of people are like, yeah, give me the shot and I'll go back to consuming, which is what we do very well here. So there's a sociological element that's been propagated, and I can go on and on, but maybe I won't. So I'll let you direct it a little bit more.
Yeah, Doc, let's get your thoughts on this and round it up. And then I've got a couple burning questions that have come from what's been shared already. So go ahead.
Well, I agree with both of them. There's not much you can, they give you meat and potatoes, basically. I could add a little gravy. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. There's agendas that are being issued and manipulation by big money. I mean, there's economic, financial things in play. There's a whole lot of stuff that's not obviously being disclosed to a majority of us. And in terms of the issue at hand, as Will said, it's a multifactorial thing that's happening to the body. And if we were to look, I'm a history buff, and I am always researching and reading very old medical books. From the late 1700s on, and this is not something that's new. We as a human species have encountered different types of reactions to our environments constantly, and to state that it's one little organism when we are surrounded by quote unquote 300 trillion, I think it is, different types of what I call, I don't really like calling it a virus, but protein or nucleic material. We should have been dead millions of years ago. So there's a lot of things at play, and I think it's an awareness that people need to kind of get up and take a little bit more charge of their health, a little bit more, get on the bandwagon of, why is it, and then this is my question, is why are we seeing a majority of illnesses here in North America, and Africa is barely touched? So what are the Western societies doing to weaken themselves, if you will, to being so susceptible to this type of um, contamination? So that should be a thought that people should be thinking about, of why is it that we having the better healthcare and being able to get food and shelter and clothing and things like that, why are we the most sick? So that's always in my mind.
So let's get into that, or let's unpack that a little bit. So people are dying. So some people that wouldn't normally die are catching whatever is going on here, and they're dying. So what do we, I guess, what are we blaming that on? Is this virus getting to people that don't have the immune system intact, and it's actually
Well,
ravaging that immune system of the weaker, less healthy person? Oh, and the kids, the teenage kids, the 20-year-old kids, myself, and I think the three of you also have zero fear when it comes to any kind of issues pertaining to this situation.
if I
Should
could,
we? Okay, good.
Go ahead, Adam.
well, I think to say that people are dying, if you actually look at the numbers now, the European chart, I know Del Bigtree on the High Wire had reported the information where Europe has like a continental death tracking system. So they basically track the deaths every day in every country throughout Europe. And they only were up for 1 week in the last, since the outbreak, and like in Italy, and that was as a whole, Europe is down. As a whole for the year, Italy is actually down. So some of that is the numbers that Dr. Will was referring to, and actually the deaths in the U.S. this year are lower than the last 2 years to this point. So there hasn't been an increase in death. There's been an increase in fear mongering and telling you people are dying, but the numbers don't really support that. And when you look at the CDC testing system and then the labeling of death, where they're saying, if you suspect it, you write it down. And then when you factor in the funding for a COVID diagnosis versus a typical, end of life complication, I think it's important to understand that 1,200 people a day die in America from viral infection every day for the last, I believe it was like up to 10 years. That's been the number. 1,200 people a day. That's not what's happening. We're not hearing about 1,200 people a day dying right now. So when you say that more people are dying, I have to kind of say, are they? Because the numbers in any study, in any statistical analysis, will show you that they're just not. And what's happening is people who are normally immunocompromised and weak are being labeled as having this. Now, I'm not saying the virus doesn't exist. I'm not saying that someone who is immunocompromised isn't going to get this virus and have a hard time, but that same person is going to walk outside their door and be surrounded by the 900 trillion viruses that are going to be around them when they see 3 other people, because you're carrying 300 trillion, right? You're carrying more bacteria and more viruses on your body. And I don't know that there's one out there that's nefarious and the others aren't. So, and how could we pick the one that is, right? Especially when we can't even diagnostically test for it. The PCD test, it gives you an 80% false positive rate. So massive inaccuracy.
That's saying it all right
So,
there.
I mean, it's 80, that's just when you factor, and then even Italy came out and said that 99% of the people who died from coronavirus had another comorbidity, which means they were chronically ill dealing with an end-of-life issue. 99% of the deaths. And they were also the oldest country in the union, and they also were the largest 5G. So the numbers, when you really start to break it down, more people aren't dying. And so that would be my answer to, well, how do you explain more people getting sick? I think if you look, like we just said, 1,200 people a day die from viral infections. This isn't, and it's never on the news. None of them.
I'd like to add something in with that because one of the COVID-19 people who died in Stamford, Connecticut was my neighbor. And yeah, and if we didn't have this thing going on, the guy simply would have died from being around chemicals at work that he was around, and he's had emphysema for years. So like Adam was saying, and Mari started to bring in this point as well, that, it's all where you're shifting, your focus.
Right.
It's it's like, let's put the magnifying glass on this.
Right.
And, now everybody's like, oh, he died of COVID-19. Well, the guy had emphysema for all these years. Granted, he's 52, but, we don't know a lot of the backstories of these people. But when we say that people are dying, I mean, I'm going to bring it up because the other doctors are probably, factored in as well. The three of us are big believers in we're being sprayed, from above, and all the lines in the sky and the chemtrails and everything and the chemicals that are being dropped on us. This has been going on in increasing density since the early 90s, when we very rarely saw anything. And now today, you very rarely don't see something. Adam and I joke, it's like, oh, what are they doing to us today? You don't really have a clear day anymore without this stuff. Even when there aren't the white lines in the sky, you still have silver skies. All the blue skies are kind of gone. You now have a silvery good.
Yeah, it's been normalized.
Yeah.
Well,
and Mari, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
No, go ahead.
What's being dropped on us?
That's a whole other thing.
I have never personally, and I've considered myself a very healthy individual, I have never had as many respiratory issues as since 2010. So much to the point, progressively wise, where I just could not stop coughing, and no matter what. And it's not only me complaining about this; it is many people complaining about some sort of toxin pathogen. I believe it's being dropped on us on a persistent basis that is just irritating everything from the sinuses. Okay, it's like we call it, in embryology, the endoderm. Everything from the sinuses, all the epithelium going down through your nasopharynx, larynx, into your lungs. That whole area is under attack, and it's been under attack through these agents for a long time. And there are ways to take care of it. There are certainly ways to take care of it, and I've been, especially through standard processes that I've learned about through both these other great doctors here, and taking boron. Those things have saved my life. Otherwise, I would still be getting 2 and 3 respiratory infections a year when I never used to have them before. So there are certain things, when you say, Glenn, that people are getting sick and dying, yeah, people are getting sick and dying. For all I know, if I didn't take care of my own respiratory issues that wouldn't go away, maybe I would be a COVID-19 death. I think what's going on is that many people have respiratory issues. And as well, there is something going on out there. I don't know if the other doctors want to chime in on this. You can call it 5G, whatever else it is, HARP. Something else is zeroing in here to put the final kill resonance in. I don't know how they're doing it, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. But for me, it seems like it's a mixture of both things. Mari, why don't you talk?
Well, I'm still, I haven't been keeping track of the numbers, but I feel like it still hasn't caught up to, if we were to count how many people, just the flu in North America, what is it, since October, 51 million had the flu and 55,000 people died of the flu. I mean, that's a lot.
And that's just since October.
That's just since October. So I feel like we're really kind of hyper-focusing on something that there's other things like tuberculosis, HIV,
obesity,
all sorts of other things that people are left and right dying. I mean, I think my husband was the one that told me the number of 7,200 every 12 seconds. People are dying in the world. 7,200 people in the world dying every 12 seconds from anything.
Right. And how interesting, how convenient it is to be able to manipulate that stream to your advantage. And that's exactly what's happening right now, because, essentially, the average person will just, he or she has on Fox and MSNBC or CNN. And that's their information stream. Whatever they hear there, that's what's happening. They don't hear anything else.
Right. And then what's worse is then you have people who are And I actually have a multitude of people talking about how they're going to the hospital. And if they're under a certain age, they're not even giving them the test, but they're saying that they have it. And they either, if they have certain symptoms, to either stay, or they have certain symptoms, not certain, like they have minimal amount of symptoms, just go home. You have it, go home. But
Right.
so now we're counting them as having it when they actually didn't get a test, regardless of the fact that the PCR is a false positive of 82%,
Right.
but let's pretend it's not. So they're being called having a positive score. And so someone with their little clicker in the hospital is going, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. And so we're really kind of conglomerating people who are, for instance, I had a friend in Switzerland whose father died at 82 from corona, when all he did was just, he had one little fever. He's 82. He was a smoker, and he wasn't feeling well for several months. So he goes to the hospital with his fever, and in 2 days he dies. Oh, he has corona. They didn't even test him. So, and then another one is my roofer. My roofer was like, his son-in-law had coughing, mucus, fever, just huge debilitation, goes to the hospital. They didn't even want to give him the test because he's in his 30s. And they're like, go home, this, that, and the other. The roofer, which is his father-in-law, was like, no, tell someone to give you the test. They give him the test. It's negative. Even though they're like, oh, you have it, go home. But they find out he's negative, and he has 2 other viral infections and a secondary bacterial infection. So if they didn't test him, they just wrote him down as having it and then would have sent him home.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying as well. Like at any other time in any other year, this is just like every day. This goes on all the time.
And here's
like the example you just gave of hacking, coughing, but like going to the hospital, because respiratory issues are the #1 reason people go to the hospital.
Not even to the hospital. Think about this, because they shut down all those, like the West Meds and the City MDs and
they have to go there.
Most people go there, right? They get a test or an antibiotic or something, and they're going there. Now everybody's getting funneled to the hospitals.
Oh, are those other places closed? I didn't realize that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And doctor's offices. I mean, how many times if your kid has a fever,
you go to
the doctors. You'd be like, hey, is it fever? Can you swab him or something? You take him to the doctor's offices are closed. So you're getting an influx of thousands of people who normally go to their doctors, the urgent cares, or wherever, to now going to the emergency room.
Well, and those urgent care places are always busy.
Yeah.
Always.
And now you shut them all down. Where the heck do you think these people are going to go?
And always. But here's the thing now. Do you think, and this would be theory, so I don't want to expand upon it, but isn't it interesting that everyone's being funneled into this form of care where there is no independent thought and where the funding is for the diagnosis is so heavily weighted, because you're not going to get the reimbursement as a solo practitioner, I don't think, and we would have to look into this. I wonder if a solo practitioner would get the same reimbursement that a hospital will for diagnosing COVID as well.
Probably not.
And why is that? And why is everyone being?
No, it's only
hospitals. Of course not. You can't bill the same for a hospital.
Right. Because it's probably
$3,000. You bill like 80. Yeah. So
Adam, you and I, we're gonna adjust this. We're gonna do a 98940 for COVID-19.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll take the 19,000. Bring them in. I'll really get them better.
Diagnose me. Yeah, exactly. I'll get them better for like 2 years. Yeah.
So,
it's probably not a paycheck. It's probably not like an insurance paycheck. They're probably going, okay, we're going to equate it to a certain amount of equipment. And
of course.
Well, that's because the ventilator is a 30,000.
Right, and the solo practitioner is not going to have a ventilator in his office.
Of course not.
No. Exactly.
Rightfully so. I mean, I'm not saying things of that nature should be handled in a general outpatient setting, but like to your point, Mary, that's a great point. They've taken away independent thought, even in the diagnostic process.
Yep.
And they've overwhelmed the system. And what's really interesting is my mom works in a nursing home, and I know a couple other people who do it as well. And what they're doing now is, and this is just my thought, the nursing homes are taking patients from the hospital now. They're sending them because they need more room. We got to take more room, more people in. And it's interesting because if you really had someone who was concerned about the elder, like concerned about immunocompromise, would you send something that deadly to the weakest population on the planet?
Exactly.
So either you want them gone, or it's not really a threat and you want to make more beds for more diagnosis and more reimbursement. Either
Right.
way, it's a scientifically bad thing to be doing,
Oh, yeah.
sending people to nursing homes, right?
Absolutely.
Churches are empty. Why aren't they setting up beds in churches, right?
Yeah.
They're tax-free, right? They're here to help the community anyway, right? How many churches could take in people who need it, right? So
Exactly.
why
I've
are they
seen the
being
same
funneled
thing.
into the nursing home? Probably because that's where Gates wants them going. So
It's a funny point that you bring about the churches thing, because
well, what are they doing?
I actually brought that up. I was at what conversation I was having, and I said back in the day when there was smallpox, when it was, what is it, the late 1700s, early 18 or mid 18, I always forget exactly. But all the churches, the basements of the churches were filled with people.
With beds, yeah.
And the nuns were the nurses, and they would always try to get a doctor or somebody who was in medicine to try to, help. But churches were always open. I never remember a church being closed, ever.
Right. So so it's an interesting thing to ponder. I mean, we won't know the answer on that, and maybe until
Well,
a long
I think,
time.
Adam, I
mean,
know
we
what
could
you're
speculate.
saying. I think what you're saying is that, I mean, this is so many different things. Like when 9/11 occurred, uh, and they spun that whole fantasy story.
Oh, for a
How
decade.
many
Yeah.
different, I mean, ever since 2001, how many different government events have happened from that event? They
Oh my
just
gosh. Yeah.
really have gotten their mileage out of that. Now they're going to get their mileage out of this. One of the
Right.
agendas I think that they want to just funnel everybody into socialized healthcare under one idea. All right, that leaves doctors like us, back in the Stone Age. Whereas this used to be, and it should be, a country of a plethora of healing disciplines and modalities, and let the person choose where they want to go. It's much like
Yeah.
vaccines. I think all of us would say, hey, look, if you want to get your vaccine, get your vaccine. When the COVID vaccine comes out, go ahead and get it. In
Right.
fact, I've been calling for all pro-vax people to line up. And just, we're going to give you your vaccine first. And then we're going to just kind of sit back and watch
I
and
think the
see
person
what happens.
I think the people who fund it and the people who create it should be the first people to get it.
Absolutely.
Right.
I've said,
Now,
Bill Gates we should have a tribunal for Bill Gates, and we should give him all 85 vaccines.
Yeah.
Just one at a time.
One time.
well, the thing to
this one.
Glenn's point, right, earlier when he said he overheard a friend of his saying that, well, if they just come with the vaccine, everything can go back to normal or something along those lines. And what's interesting with this is, okay, so certain people, poster boys, are even pissed now within the pharma cabal, right? And I'm just going to say the pharma cabal because that's what it is. And anyone on this call,
right.
I don't have to educate you as to that being that. So they're Dr. Paul Offit, right, and Hotez, both of them said the coronavirus vaccine is way too deadly to be pursued. Recently, they said it shouldn't be. You should not do this. These are savage men. This is a man. Paul Offit said you could give 10,000 vaccinations to a baby at once and they would be fine. This is a man who basically got a lot of kids hurt. So, and he said this is so dangerous because Hotez was trying to create this vaccine a while ago.
Right.
And there's every time they've tried to make a corona style, basically a corona based vaccine, every animal dies. They all die.
Right. It's like Satan taking the vaccine out of the guy's hands. Like, don't give that to him. It's not going to be good for him.
Exactly. The devil's like, man, that's pretty messed up. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. You have like two of the most evil men who sold their souls and have been, very easily exposed as taking money for profits to push these things as being spokespersons for the American Academy of Pediatrics and Hotez for, all the government, whatever. And so, but with that, these two have even said it's way too dangerous to attempt this vaccine, and but people will, the people who they say, and these are the people who people use to make the decision to get the vaccine.
Well, I tell you, this is going to be a shit show when we start coming out of this over the next couple of months. I mean, and maybe you guys can, start talking, because I don't really think, like I said, as with 9/11, they just kind of, like I say, let's see what can we do next. I think that the country is divided. We have splits on both sides, and I don't really think they know what the hell is going to happen. I think that they have an idea of where they'd like to go with it. Oh, let's give everybody this immunity card. Oh, now let's get adults vaccinated. Oh, let's a lot of the things that people like us and our community is worried about. But like Trump said when he was up in front of everybody, and he's got some millennial liberal kid whining at him from the press area there, saying, well, aren't you going to get everybody tested? You got to get everybody tested. And Trump is just 325 million people. Okay, it would be nice. It ain't going to happen. Next question. And so there's so much going on. There's so much indecision happening, which is causing so much of the anxiety that everybody's having. I don't know about you guys, but I wake up every morning and I'm like, okay, what day is this? When's it going to be over? We turn to the TV. Oh, okay. They don't know yet. So it's the most frustrating thing. The level of mental illness and anxiety that people have from having their entire life's routine uprooted, not only theirs, but their kids. Yeah. If you're a parent,
what I think? I'm going to add to that a little bit.
Good.
Because Glenn touched upon a point. He said, as myself and us, we're probably more confident than most that we won't get sick. And I think as a practitioner of health, as a teacher of health, the one big thing that we overall haven't really addressed is the fact that since I wouldn't say probably post World War II, the ability for a person to provide themselves the nourishment necessary to have optimal health has decreased substantially. Where simple things that normally would just go in and then maybe a little diarrhea and then out turns into these grandiose, expelling from the body. And the three biggest factors that people really don't have enough of in their diet is where they get their source of vitamin A, which is predominantly fats. The fats are we went from butter and lard and all sorts of things to the 1970s of, before that, all the industrial oils, right? We have the soy oils and the canola oils and all that stuff. And that strips your body of the vitamin A. And you said, Will, one of the biggest things is the respiratory thing, the endothelium. Now, the endothelium needs an inordinate amount of vitamin A.
Vitamin A.
We know that because the eyeballs are coated with that type of mucus, and eyeballs are high in vitamin A. Anybody knows that if they eat fish, you eat the eyeballs, right? So where is all this nourishment that people are supposed to be getting and be knowledgeable of from long ago, so that their bodies wouldn't be so easily like, how many of all of us, how many times we've seen allergies and sensitivities and simple things that should be the body process, and now we've turned into such a post-industrial sick society. I grew up in the 80s where my father from South America, when I had like allergies, I was 6 years old and I was having allergies, and my dad goes, in South America there's no such thing as allergies. You don't there's no hay fever, there's none of that. And so I think what all of this really needs to be, what people really need to take away, the big lesson, the big takeaway needs to be the fortification of the body. Despite the fact, yes, and I agree, you've got the chemtrails, okay, and you've got all sorts of things really bombarding the body, 5G, the HARP, absolutely, 100%. But the one basic thing, the fundamental basis of the body is destroyed. The the shift and the balance and the homeostatic principle that
Right.
the body is based on. I mean, how many people get all their minerals? How many people get all their vitamins? How many people get all their macronutrients on a daily basis? They're
Right.
stripped constantly. You know, their adrenals are dragging. Their liver can't detoxify half the stuff that they're doing that they choose to take. Not even the chemicals that are coming in that they don't choose.
Right.
Stuff that they choose to take in that are chemicals. You know, and their intestines are mucked up, so they can't even evacuate the garbage that they're taking in. And then on top of that, cells are dying left and right. The telomeres are probably that big, and their cells are dying constantly instead of cells lasting longer and being actually functioning. You know, the dynamic of the fact that our pituitary is probably solidified from the fluoride, and then the gland is like this big instead of being big. You know,
Not to forget about our pineal gland.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that
Or
doesn't even
calcified.
exist. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Well,
I mean,
let me pull it back for a second,
Sure,
and
go ahead.
let's stay on this line of thinking now. So let's get into some things that people can do. Let's say the sheep have been scared. Are they scared enough to listen to what people are saying about their health? They know that they've been drinking or smoking or not getting enough sleep and doing all this stuff. And now they're like, geez, I don't want to get this. And if that means I've got to do this, this, and this, which are in my control, what are some of those things that they can do at this point? Even if this thing doesn't exist, which we're talking about enough, but let's take advantage of this from the healthy side and say, okay,
Right.
let's do this.
Well, I think what you know, the things that have always been there have to be there, and I'll start with saying the things that have always been there need to be done. You have to exercise, you have to eat nourished, right? You have to eat all the food. You have to get all your vitamins and minerals. It sounds very childish and archaic, but we're so
Some
removed
food
from
if
that.
you can.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then herbal, you know, I mean, there's a time for more advanced care, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I think you have to have a positive spiritual mind. You have to turn on the cortisol just from watching TV is going to destroy your adrenal glands, you know? So society, just from the social media, there's so much stress. So even, let's take someone who is eating perfectly, all right? Quote unquote perfectly. And even if you're, you know, I read a study, this was a while ago too, maybe 10 years ago, where if you eat broccoli now, I think it was, let's just say it was like a cup of broccoli now, or back in 1942, you would have to eat 14 cups of broccoli now to get the
I
same
know what.
nutrient content.
Yeah, I read that.
Remember that study? And
Yep.
and it was just like, so who can eat that much? All right, now take into account that the food is nutrient depleted. The soil has been, for a whole host of reasons, we'll leave all the, you know, the you know, even just the lack of crop rotation, the soil's depleted. Okay, we won't talk about the chemicals and everything going into it. So the soil's depleted, you're not getting any nutrients. How are you going to get that all, right? It's very challenging. And then on top of it, we're in a state of needing to constantly detox. And I think, Doc, that is the biggest challenge we face, because a hard thing to do is cleanse and nourish. The body doesn't like to do both of those things at the same time. You have to know what you're doing. That's where you have to see a proper health practitioner, because you're going to get sick most likely if you try it on your own, or you're going to miss the nutrients you need to get through that detoxification. So we're in a situation now where purification has to not be something you think you want to do once a year. It can't be a fad thing. You can't do it because it's bathing suit season. You can't do it because
Going on a yoga retreat.
Yeah, you can't do it because, right, you want to have a good, you know, pictures for your, like, you know, this is something that's happening every day, even for the person who isn't imbibing in the
Right.
voluntary
No, that has to
chemical
be
destruction.
normalized. Yep.
Right. So that has to be your day. So I think infrared saunas are huge, right?
Excellent.
I think vitamin D therapy lighting is massive. If you factor in the chemtrails, we're getting way less UV light than we ever used to. Viruses are sticking around longer. Typically they'd be dead, but when the sun's rays aren't hitting the earth, the flu season's a lot longer now. I would also think Africa might be a little healthier because they get some sun. So that would have been one of my responses to that. They actually have vitamin D. which is one of your biggest viral defenders. You have to hydration. You think about water. Can you find water? Now, tap water has been shown to contain how many chemicals in it, how many pharmaceuticals, hexavalent chromium, which will kill you. And I mean, so the challenge, even for the person who's not smoking, not drinking, not having negative thoughts, they still have to detox, because we don't live in a world where you can avoid it now. And you just take fluoride.
Dehydration and acidic pH. Dehydration and acidic pH are the common denominators to every disease, right, you guys? I mean, two things: dehydration, acidic pH, acidic blood system,
right?
Or acidic lymph.
Right, and then you take a supplement industry that's riddled with mostly isolated nutrients that are chemicals made by the pharmaceutical
that you
companies.
Can't use. Exactly right.
That you pee out, and you get this. So it's a very challenging thing to do. It would be really nice to hear the narrative on television, be like, hey, you guys, this is how you get healthy. This is what you should do. This is how you should, but obviously that's not going to happen. That message, it can't be patented. So you're not going to hear it coming through on the television. But yeah, I think the same things that I always apply. If it moves or if it grows, eat it. And, and if it's real clean water, drink it. And if it's exercise, do it. And then if it gets beyond that, see someone who knows the truth about how to deal with yourself and your health. But the biggest challenge to that right now, in my opinion, is the constant need for detoxification. It's very challenging. It really is hard. Everyone on this call, Dr. Will, I share the same I never had respiratory issues in my life. In the last 5 years, I've been dealing with, I got bronchitis in July last year, and
you guys need more butter. You guys need to eat butter.
Oh, I
can't tell you how much butter I eat. I love butter.
I'm going to tell you what you think.
I am cholesterol Charlie.
I'll be glad to use it.
What you think is a lot is actually not a lot, because I know people who eat enormous. I mean, it's literally they eat it like cheese every day.
Yeah.
I think it's very anti-inflammatory.
I'm Mediterranean. I think if I ate it like cheese, I'd probably drop.
But I mean, there was a whole host of other.
Yeah.
Right, and there were a whole host of factors for that. I know I got run down, my adrenals got run down, but still, you don't see a pathology typically rear its head in July. And at the same time, I had a ton of patients who were coming in with all respiratory stuff in the summer. So that isn't the normal terrain for microbes in us to break down. That is.
Can I tell you something? People are hungry to get rid of these respiratory issues, because they wouldn't come to us first. Most of them don't. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. They go to their regular GP for that, and they're just not getting rid of it. They're not. No one's getting rid of this respiratory stuff. So then they default on doctors like us, and we use standard process. So we use proper nutrition. We're doing do this, right? Make sure you're only eating organic, exercise. Get your weight down. And make sure you're hydrated with proper water. I mean, I had a pregnant woman once tell me that, I drink plenty of water. Oh yeah, she's drinking a half a gallon of tap water a day. It's just, people just don't know sometimes that's probably drinking tap water is probably going to dehydrate you more.
Well, I had a pregnant woman who was really ill, came to me, dig through the history, go through everything, really ill, like you name it, just total shutdown, gonna lose the baby. And I start feeling her, from working with our hands, and just her diet, her hydration and her skin felt pretty bad. And so I was like, well, are you drinking? Yeah, I drink all day. What are you drinking? Oh, well, I can't drink water, it makes me gag. So, I said, well, what if you put lemon in it? She goes, oh, well, that's kind of not fun. My pediatrician, or the OBGYN, because the baby wasn't there yet, right, said, you should drink Crystal Light. So she's, because it's 0 calories. So she had aspartame poisoning. She had aspartame poisoning, right? So I'm like, wait a minute, you're growing a human and you're consuming how much of a neurotoxin liters a day. She's like, I love it. And then so I had to get in, show the FDA's own toxicology reports on, because, the OBGYN said it's safe because there's 0 calories. And I said, well, it'll kill you. I mean, people who are making this stuff have to wear hazmat suits when they can't
Right,
touch
exactly.
it. It's
Aspartame.
basically a similar recipe to Agent Orange, right? Aspartame. It's
Right.
what they used to deforest
Sure.
Vietnam.
Frying your brain. I mean, yeah,
Right.
really.
So she continued getting sick about a week or two, or maybe a week after throwing up. And then I just, well, you're going to lose your baby, and she quit drinking the Crystal Light, and within a week, she thought she was baby heavy. She was retaining because her endocrine system was so out of whack, right? So she was holding on to excess water. She lost like 10 pounds and could sleep, could eat. And this is a doctor who told her to do that. So do you get mad at a patient? Who do you point to in that situation, right? The industry? Do you point to the doctor? Do you point to the patient? Either way, it's a tragedy that a growing baby was probably, she was going to miscarry if she kept on that path.
It's a reflection of society. I'm telling you right now, from all my studies, it's literally,
totally.
It changed around between World War I and World War II, but after World War II, we got Michael,
the Industrial Revolution,
margarine, we got Betty Crocker. I mean,
guys, let me
big
bring
food
it back for a second before we get off. You've all kind of talked about the importance of water. So somebody who's watching this or listening to this, they're gonna ask, well, what water would I drink? If it's not tap water, and most of us should know not to. But are there safe bottled water? Should we be doing the reverse osmosis? Should we be distilling? What would be the recommendations or the thoughts or things that have worked in your practice?
Get your own filtration system. Adam and I use a company called, what's it called?
I believe WellSys or EnviroWater is the company. They're regional here, but they use the WellSys.
Many of them out there.
It's reverse Yeah, I think you got to start with reverse osmosis, right? I think that's where it starts. And then
what do you use, Mari?
I use Aquasana. They have the RO, the reverse osmosis, but they remineralize. So
and that's what ours does. Yeah,
that's what ours does as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's the basis. If you're going to ask them, like, what do you do? That's the basic right there. Reverse RO with remineralization.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're simple. You can get home units right to your sink.
Oh yeah.
Whole house units if you're really fired up. I mean, if people are going to shower in this stuff too, you need something.
I don't do that.
You can't do a shower filter.
You can do a HEPA
filter. Good head filter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But with that, I forgot. I wanted to make a point to. Whatever about the river. I guess it doesn't matter.
Go for it. No, say.
I know. I forget. I must need more water.
Yeah.
So let me just keep this going a little bit longer on the health and nutrition. Doc, you talked about vitamin A. I'm hearing vitamin D from sunlight. Where does supplementation for vitamin D, is that helpful in any way? And also, we haven't brought up vitamin C, which seems to be kind of a hot topic out there as well. Some countries or some hospitals or some doctors are using intravenous vitamin C and saying it's helping.
For sure. I mean, Wuhan shipped in 50 tons of vitamin C, but they didn't report it in the American media because it's not, like, again, a patent. It's not a pharmaceutical, right? So, but they brought in 50 tons of vitamin C into Wuhan to stop the people from, dying, basically. And that's when they turned the corner when they shipped in all the vitamin C. So vitamin C is astronomically important. The trick with vitamin C,
vitamin C and zinc are going to prevent replication. Yeah, vitamin C and zinc combined, are going to prevent viral replication.
I guess we could go into something that's specific to this particular virus that one biophysicist, and I know I shared this with Will, and now all the numbers and researchers are coming out, shared, was that this is an RNA virus. And we won't have to go too far into what that means, but it basically needs to attach to your RNA to live. As you know, viruses aren't alive until they're
not alive anyway.
They're not alive.
Yeah.
They can't live unless they can latch onto your own body. So the one study here is that the theory with this virus, and it seems to be working, and it's the promise, and I'll tie it together to that drug they want to use, is basically this drug attaches to the ACE2 receptor in your RNA. This virus, sorry. And now, if you have proper or sufficient levels of zinc, those receptors will be bound by zinc. All right. And so this way the virus has nowhere to attach. Just like if you have enough vitamin C, certain things aren't going to happen. And another thing I would also add that's very important is calcium, because calcium is how your body identifies a virus to even begin with. Your calcium, enough calcium in the blood is how your T cells actually see viruses and go after them. So being calcium deficient is also a very important thing, especially when you factor in people who are poorly hydrated with, sugar, soda, too much coffee, sweeteners, right? Their calcium is going to struggle. And obviously calcium is a pretty abundant nutrient in whole food altogether, but there's enough things that we put in our body that will take it out. So, but with this now, the quinine is the thing that this hydroxychloroquine that they keep
The quinine.
talking about this drug. It's quinine, right? Now, one thing you can find quinine in is tonic water. And I've shared this with some friends and some colleagues. And I had a friend who actually got corona in the city, and I told him to do this. And he actually went for a run 2 days later. So, but, they could speak to his health or speak to what we did, who knows. But thank goodness he's doing well. The quinine accelerates zinc into the cell. So what that does is it basically pushes more zinc than you would get without it going into the cell. So this way the cells are fatter with zinc, the receptors are blocked, and the virus basically can't work. My understanding is I think that's actually the methodology for the pharmaceutical, is because they're also giving that with zinc, the hydroxychloroquine, right? That doctor in New York City who's had
there's a doctor
he treated like 700
there's a
people
doctor in
Manhattan, right? And they 100% recovery rate. So zinc in this particular case, zinc's always important. The quinine is going to, for any nuggets on people who are worried about this particular virus, some tonic water, with a good zinc source is going to be really beneficial. Vitamin D, we know, vitamin
Low
C.
sugar tonic water.
Yes. Low sugar. Yeah.
Low sugar tonic water?
Yes. You don't want the Schweppes. No Schweppes.
Yeah, no Schweppes. I was going to say Polar. Yeah, don't buy Schweppes. Right, exactly. Schweppes is dirty. We're brand shaming. Anyway, so that would be specific. But that would be specific to this virus. That's a help, I can't really say where I got this information from, but I got this information before it even was in America. This was when it was out in China.
Well, Dr. Massoud, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko over in Monroe has already seen about 1,000 patients that he's successfully cured, and his main thing is using quinine with zinc.
Is that
he uses Z-Pak as well.
Yeah.
I just had a patient this morning who I ordered blood work for. I said, you have to give this guy a call because she's worried. So, well, if you're worried in whatever way, shape, or form, number one, I think if people are worried, if they're having trouble breathing, and if they're having a respiratory issue, there's two things you got to do. I would first get a blood work and check your hemoglobin. That's for real if you're having issues. And I would secondly get to somebody like Zelenko, and you have to consider zinc, quinine. That seems to be the thing that's working.
I'm going to have to agree with Dr. Massoud about the calcium, though.
Yeah.
Because I had a handful of patients that also had the trouble breathing thing. I've had patients with trouble breathing forever, but specifically around this time frame. And what happens is also, we don't realize it, but when there is that, you talked about and you touched upon the pH, the acidity, what happens is the lactic acid in the blood builds up. And so calcium is then shunted from the bones or the tissue to buffer the blood. So
hence your osteoporosis.
Right. So standard process makes calcium lactate, which is the soluble blood version of the calcium specifically. And immediately within a day or so, a handful of these patients said, "Oh, that's amazing. I don't feel that tightness anymore. I don't feel that restriction." And so that's the lactic acid building up in the mucosa and the lungs.
It's astounding about when you hit on the right thing with a patient when you're a natural practitioner like we are. And we're just used to this because Glenn, because we've been practicing like this for a long time. But, we know that as soon as we get it right with any of these different therapies that we're talking about, even with chiropractic, when you finally just give a proper adjustment and get the bone off the nerve, and people are like, oh, why didn't I do this like 10 years ago? Well, the information, it's always been there, drink proper water, eat good food. Get your vitamin A, get your vitamin D. it's, you know, I think we touched on something before, Glenn, and actually all of us touched on something where we had said, look at where our mindset is as a collective consciousness of humans. All right, we have taken away the natural aspect of healing, so much to the point whereas, you know, if you cut yourself, you know that wound is going to heal. You're going to get a little scab there.
Absolutely.
You know, how far off are we from saying if you cut yourself, now you're going to have a shot and a few pills and just all these different ointments and everything
Right.
on there? It's going to heal no matter what. But the body is that way with everything. If you do the right things for it, you know, we've always said in chiropractic anyway, you know, the body needs no help. It just needs no interference.
Right, get out of
And
the
we
way.
are getting so far away from that. And the globe is ripe for a germophobic episode as we're having at this point. You don't have to be afraid of germs. You don't have to be afraid of all the fear mongering they put out. If you have education, if you completely understand that your body's going to be fine, which all of us own, okay, that your body's going to be fine because you know how to do the right things. If you can just own that, then we wouldn't be, if people would own that, we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in,
Perfectly
because
said.
people are easily swayed.
Perfectly said.
Well,
Yeah.
we touched on a bunch of things here. I want to also ask if you guys are familiar with herbs and what herbs out there can also be added in at this time via tea, via any other
I
way.
would say the number one herb, and maybe you guys would agree with me or not, I know Adam would, is andrographis if you're having respiratory issues or endothelial issues going from the sinuses down to the lungs. Andrographis is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. There's lungwort, pleurisy-wort, osha root.
Right. I licorice. I mean, just to keep the mucosal lining free flowing.
Golden seal. Golden seal is another one. I mean,
seal is
that's
amazing.
Golden seal is a tremendous healer.
Echinacea, but you know the problem, it's got to be high potency, high quality echinacea, like any herb. You know,
Wild cherry bark.
Cherry bark, right?
Shouldn't come from CVS. Your herb shouldn't come from CVS.
No.
You're not
Well,
taking
honestly,
any herbs.
until Dr. Massoud told me about the standard process, golden seal. I mean, you've told me about a lot of different things. Mari, you told me about a few different things that I tried. But I would say that golden seal from standard process, it's expensive,
Liquids.
but
It's potent. It's potent.
let me tell you something.
so
You take a
good.
teaspoon of that, I mean, there isn't anything funky that will live in your system. It's done.
Yeah.
And you feel amazing.
You know, another thing I think, I'm sorry to interrupt, Will,
go for it.
that we forgot, but another basic thing, because I know we're talking about this Corona thing, two other things, you know, oregano oil, and I think colloidal silver. I do like colloidal silver, especially for the patients who don't like tinctures like golden seal or something like that, right? Because it's a powerful antiseptic that has no taste, right? And it's very safe and effective, right? But I mean, golden seal, you and I like it. I'm kind of used to it. But you know, everyone in the room is not too happy when I take it.
I give it to my daughter. She instantly throws up. I can't give it to her. I have to give her a double dose of andrographis.
Right. Yeah.
But by the way, everybody in my house has had something. We've all had something through this. Okay.
Yeah.
I got my wife and my daughter both out of it in 3 days with everything we're talking about.
No,
okay.
Right.
Also with
colloidal
wormwood.
Silver. Yeah. Wormwood. Yeah. Colloidal silver is just another. I'm a fan. I don't know I know Dr. Will loves it. Maria, I'm not sure, Mari, if it's something that you're using a bit in your practice, but I like it because sometimes people can get their hands on it even when they're not near a doctor.
And that's colloidal silver, correct?
Colloidal silver. Yeah.
Mari, is colloidal silver something that isn't like, do you need atomic silver, or is it? I thought colloid was only for the skin for some reason.
No, it's nano, some of it.
Nano, right? Nano silver.
Yeah.
So I remember, Adam, you told me when I had conjunctivitis to use the colloidal silver in my eye, and I used that, and it's the only thing that got rid of it.
Yeah, it's like immediate. It clears out eye infections.
But I heard from somebody else that actually colloidal silver doesn't do much for the internal. You have to have a nanoparticle silver.
Right, which is Sovereign Silver is nano.
Sovereign Silver is a good product. Right.
They're nano, yeah. I mean, there's so much. Yeah, that's a whole conversation to get into.
Hey,
but yes.
Another question here, also asked on Facebook Live here. There seemed to be some confusion with elderberry. elderberry is like
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
not to take for this kind of situation. Is it something that people are aware of that actually works, and somebody tried to spin something and then try to get people away from elderberry?
And elderberry has been used for, I don't even know how many centuries, as an antiviral. I mean, I don't know who came up with that, and they were giving me the whole I heard somebody say something about it creates a cytokinetic storm because of this specific virus. So far, all the people I recommended for elderberry, even people who were sick, elderberry helped them. So I don't know where the whole cytokinetic storm and it makes it worse and all that stuff. I don't know where that comes from.
Well,
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys remember this story or not, but before this whole mess happened in October, there was a news story that broke about a woman who had who panicked and went to the natural, like, granola mom friends that she had about her son, because her son had a really bad flu and she didn't know what to do about it. Right, he had really bad respiratory stuff, and the granola moms, as they portrayed it in the Associated Press, told her, "Oh, take the elderberry syrup. Take elderberry syrup." Well, the kid took elderberry syrup and he died. Okay, and that's all that they said. Okay, what you found out later was that the kid was 4 days off of a flu shot. 11-year-old kid.
That.
It's tragic,
Yeah,
but
it's
you
awful.
don't hear what threw the kid into the crisis. And of course, this mother was like, "I'll do anything. I'll do anything." He's having a reaction to it. You know,
Well, we
I mean,
discussed.
Adam and I share patients have had reactions to flu and tetanus shots. So, and without consulting either of us, they may have very well died. We've experienced this over the years.
I have too.
You know,
I have
so
too.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
well, there was that story with the kid who passed away this year, and they said kid dies from not getting his flu shot, right? Kid didn't get a flu shot and died, right? But then, if you read the article, he had a flu shot. He didn't have two. He didn't get two. So
See,
the headline,
this is criminal.
it's like,
This is criminal,
what?
and it
Now you
speaks
need
to
two?
it speaks to what's happening with COVID-19 right now. Okay, there's a lot of criminal activity happening right now, and it's allowed to happen because the media, and I like to call it the liberal media,
Right.
they're a bunch of criminals, and
Well,
they put this stuff out now. They put this propaganda out more than ever, okay, because they can, because there's no checks and balances with it. Okay, the only
well,
checks and balances is a opposition party, which tends to be more conservative, which says, "Hey, you can't do that," and they say, "Oh yeah, well, watch me, I'm going to keep doing it." All right, they just keep coming and coming and coming, and this fear mongering has shut down the globe, and it is criminal activity, and in my opinion, it deserves a Nuremberg trial.
right.
Well, good.
Well,
Well, one thing you talked about the flu shot, something to chew on is more and more now people are correlating people who have had the flu shot are testing positive for corona. More and
right,
more now. So
right,
there's more
increases your
articles
likelihood of.
on mainstream news talking about, is there something going on with the flu shot that caused people to be susceptible
I was
to,
reading something out that said the flu shots have corona in it
yep, that's
as
it.
a result of just to make the flu shot.
Yep.
So,
Hey,
yeah.
let's tie it up right now. One, my computer's low and I don't have my cord to plug it in. But two is,
Yeah, I had to charge
It's a
too.
good way to end.
we've been hitting on a lot of things. If we could all, do we have any links or videos or books, or people have time on their hands right now, so where can people go to maybe who may not, who be watching this, or maybe listening to this or watching this video later, saying, you know what, maybe what they're saying here makes a little sense to me now. I want to take a little further. What can I read? What can I study? What can I watch? Are there any links or books other than your book, Doc? And I want you to repeat your book. But you guys can share any things people can go to for further education.
I've got three.
Go ahead.
AIDS Inc. by John Rappaport. Fight for Your Health. Oh man, I forgot the name of that guy. Fight for Your Health. It's a good one though. It talks about how you're supposed to take your health into your own hands and how chemical pharmaceuticals are actually making you weaker. And the third one is basically another one along the lines of Dr. Will is Nancy Appleton, Pester's. I just pulled it up. Fight for Your Health. Byron Richards is the book. Fight for Your Health. The other one is Nancy Appleton's The Curse of Louis Pasteur. So those three.
Good ones.
I mean, I would say if you really just send me a friend request and tell me that you saw me here.
Right.
My Facebook page is loaded with stuff and videos
Yeah.
and things like that. I mean, there isn't any really one thing. It's like Dr. Shiva. How do you pronounce his last name? Is it Arudada? Something like that?
Arudade.
I don't want to mispronounce it, but we just call him Dr. Shiva. I mean, he's brilliant, I think, and he says it clearer than anybody. I mean, the government right now is getting in the way of the doctor-patient relationship, and the doctor-patient relationship is sacred and it's everything. Right? When you get that accomplished, you can't say, like Glenn, you can't say one thing fits in for every person. It just doesn't.
Absolutely.
All right. We're not talking about, and I mentioned this about the COVID issue to begin with. All right. All you're seeing for COVID issues, and we just analyze daily a bunch of numbers. Oh, this many numbers survived and this many numbers died. Okay, this number. We're not talking about numbers. We're talking about people. Right. And every single one of these COVID cases is a person that has a different story. All right. They all intertwine somehow, but that's where the doctor-patient relationship comes in. And, when you start funneling all these people into one answer, either that being a vaccine or putting them all in Elmhurst Hospital because everything else is closed, that's when things get completely screwed up. So, I mean, we hit on a lot of different things here. If I were to sum it up, I'd say it's nutrition, it's detoxing, it's hydration, it's exercise, it's positive mental attitude. It's all of those things. And it's believing in yourself and the wisdom of your body. And if you don't know how to do that, then you got to get to a practitioner that can teach you, like us. These are the things that are going to keep you healthy and alive and keep your kids healthy and alive.
Also create something that's unique for you, yourself, and what your body's needs are. Because we can talk about needing vitamin A and vitamin this and vitamin that, but everybody has a unique response to contagions, to stressors, to environmental changes. So again, a practitioner is always needed in order for us to really kind of hone in on what is it that your body needs through the dynamic time of change.
Right. That's kind of where I was going to come in, Glenn, when you asked was, I love the books. I love the citations. I love to geek out on all the science and I love it. But, and I encourage people to do the same and I hope they do. But I think you can read it, but the easiest thing to do is go to GreenwichWellness.com, go to Dr. Will's site, go to Mary's site, go and find someone who does this and shorten your learning curve if you're really concerned. Or go to the emergency room and stand with a bunch of people who are going to get misdiagnosed and expose yourself, I guess, because if you're really concerned, I said something to someone a week or two ago, the best way to not get sick is to get healthy. So, maybe do that.
Well said.
And everyone's like, well, what's going on? And then you go to the grocery store and you look around and are you kidding me? These people are wearing masks.
And stop. You see, one of the things, this is the big thing, that one of the big lies that this whole COVID-19 and the demons that are out there putting this thing out are trying to convince humanity of. They're trying to convince humanity that you are imperfect, all right, and that you need them. All right. And without their one solution for the entire species, okay, you are going to crumble and die. They are teaching you you could get up one morning, you could feel fantastic. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the disorder and you can't infect 10,000 other people and kill them. All right. They're trying to get everybody to believe that just normal existence that God has given us, normal everyday life and loving and living and loving and breathing air and kissing our kids and loving our family and going to work and doing service for all of this is just not normal anymore, because we can have one event that happens, somebody sneezes in your face and the entire thing just goes to shit. All right. Unless, of course, you follow their directions and you take their one vaccine, okay, which will get everybody back to basketball, which is where Glenn started with this. It's lunacy. It's complete lunacy. Your body is healthy. You were born healthy. You're meant to stay healthy. All right. There are 10 million chemical reactions that go on in your body practically every second. And you can't keep track of any of those. So you have to start believing in your own infinite intelligence and figure out how to get that turned on and stop believing what you're hearing on television. Probably the best thing you do right now is turn off the TV and get involved in one of these protests that they just had up in Ohio. Okay.
I saw that.
Where they're saying, get us back to work. All right. They're still all standing 6 feet apart. I can't understand that. I mean, can you imagine? I think we should all just be huddled in, go for a protest, let them all put us in the paddy wagon. You know what I'm saying?
So
I mean, what?
So I'm watching. So like 4 or 5 months ago, there was a concert I'm watching because a lot of artists are offering these free streams from their concerts now. And just to your point there, I'm watching with my brother. We're watching this concert 2 nights ago, and it's just like, 20,000 people packed in. They're showing the front row. Everyone's leaning on each other, singing and this and that. And I'm like, that wasn't even a year ago. You mean to tell me there was no viruses in that mix? Right? There's like 400 million, billion, trillion viruses in that pool. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody thought twice.
Right. But all of a sudden it's a problem now.
But all of a sudden
mosh pits, people jumping on each other, sweating, dripping.
Yeah.
You got somebody sweating in your mouth. You know what I mean? It's give me a break.
Yeah. And now, you got to cross the street, when you see someone on the same side as you. It's like, what just happened? How did they?
Well, as you were saying, you were walking down the street, with your lady friend, and somebody's running by, and they go across the street because they need to avoid you because of social distancing.
Yeah,
I mean, when you get a society that's believing this utter bullcrap, that's actually going to make a difference.
Through the air, killing people, we would have been dead already. Doesn't BJ have the quote when he said, "If the germ theory of disease were true, no one would be alive to see it"?
Exactly.
No one would survive.
Oh, but the social distancing is working. It's working. It's look, the number is starting to go down a little bit. It's working.
Oh, the masks are working. The nanoparticle can't get through the mask.
Yeah, 0.03 microns can't fit through.
Or the virus can't get into your eyeball, or the core of your skin because you're wearing a glove.
Or the piece of plastic that they put up at the 7-Eleven. It's not jumping over the top, or going under it. No, can't do that. Or the shower curtain they put up at the post office. You know what I mean?
CVS put up a shower curtain too, and I'm like, this is the most unhygienic thing ever. I'm like, this is like a petri dish just right in front of people.
I was laughing.
We clean it. Do you clean it every 10 seconds? I mean,
I was laughing at a woman.
These people are so stupid.
I was laughing internally at a woman when I went to the store about a week ago. She was wearing a tank top and shorty shorts because it was a warm day. She had a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's you're good with the mask, but you are wearing mini shorts and a tank top.
Yeah, none of your orifices are exposed.
Nothing else is happening there.
You gotta love handkerchiefs. Yeah, either way, Glenn, you gotta be proud.
We're getting a little sarcastic here, which is great and it's funny, and I think people kind of need that a little bit because there's too many. People are taking this too seriously. I know somebody.
You think?
Somebody watching this Facebook Live right now, and I'm gonna check in with her after this, and just see how she's doing because what we're conversing about, what you're conversing about, is something way over her head as far as this is going, and I think for a lot of people, but I think they need to hear this.
What are you talking about?
Well, I think you also. There's people out there watching this Facebook Live that, they're coming to pick up a smoothie at the cafe and, they want us to put it down on the table and walk in before they walk and go get it. So there's still people that are indoctrinated into that mindset. So I want to just give everybody a last positive way to share and end our conversation. This was great. I'd love to do it again, actually. Each one of you just take, a couple minutes, again, remind people where you're from, where your practice is situated, but just some positivity to end today's conversation. Doc Will, why don't you start us since this is your idea and my idea. Let's have you kind of just some, again, you've said you've been positive throughout. Just let's end it on a good positive note.
The positive note that I have for people is that I don't believe that they can implement everything they want to implement as far as negative agendas with this thing are concerned. And I believe that Trump is in our corner as far as getting everybody back to work as soon as possible. You should not be afraid of the virus. It is your right to get the virus if you know you're healthy, and you should know you're healthy. All right. Process it through. If you get a little sick, get sick for a couple of days, get it out of the system, and you're going to be fine. You're not going to infect anybody else or kill anybody else.
Right. I guess what I would say is nature has been around a long time. Pathogens have been around a long, long time. They've been here before us. They're going to be here after us. And nature is going to win. So you can either embrace it and make it a part of your life and use it to make you stronger, or you can be afraid of things that are not natural and think that nature isn't going to win in the long run. Because no matter if the germ theory is even true, nature's still going to win, right? So embrace the things nature has given us. Get in touch with real health, your innate intelligence, your universal power that we all have to be well, and get in touch with that. I'm Greenwich Wellness. You guys can put where you're at. I'm Dr. Massoud. We do this stuff all the time, and people change. People change really quick. People come in really sick, and if they embrace the things that are naturally there and that are already within them and activate them, their life changes. And in
Just
3 months,
Google my name, you'll find me.
Yeah. So they change. So leaving all the political and this skepticism and theories out of it, is that nature's going to win. Why don't you use it on your side?
Hey, Doc Will, just for people who kind of joined late, why don't you just go ahead and spell your name so everybody's got it on.
Isn't it up there? And Mari, you didn't have a chance to speak. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I
Yeah.
was just going to echo exactly what you said. Have faith in your body. It is nature, right? Your body is nature, and that this is a good time to embrace. Now that we have time being at home, right? Start learning, start reading up on the things to really kind of strengthen your body and strengthen the environment around you, and to really also kind of get some of the juices flowing. There's a great doctor, a physiologist actually, Claude Bernard, and the 4 factors that he believed to kind of help balance the body was the acid alkaline, maintain your nutritional status, right? Constantly nourish yourself, try to reduce the poisons that are coming in the body, and remember that we are electrical organisms. We are all electrons. We're more space than anything else, but we're electrons and atoms. And so there is a significant interaction that we have with our computers and our cell phones and everything that's electrical around us. So make sure that you have an understanding that also impacts and stresses the body as well.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this Zoom talk and this Facebook Live. We've had anywhere from 9 to 22 people on Facebook Live, in and out. We believe it or not, you guys want to guess how long this has gone?
A couple hours.
Well, it's an hour, and we're at an hour and 22 minutes right now. So
Cool.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like that. You guys have brought some great information.
I brought together a good group.
Yeah.
I knew these guys would put. How do we get a copy of this so we could spread it around to our own page?
Yep. Once we finish up, I'll stop the recording here with Zoom, and I'll learn how to send you the link, and you can share it with some people. It's going to be a big one, so we'll figure it all out. But
Dropbox.
Oh,
yep.
Dropbox. Okay.
Well done. Yeah. But again, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And being with us. It was a good time. Hey, I want to do it again.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
All right, you guys. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.
All right, guys. Be